Candidates have begun filing to participate in the first presidential primary of 2020 in New Hampshire. South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg was the first Democratic candidate to file. Senator Bernie Sanders followed suit on day 2 of the filing period. And sorry about that.
That's all right. The candidates have 2.5 weeks. We're very excited about New Hampshire here to pay the $1,000 fee to register their names on the primary ballot. Joining us to discuss the reception Buttigieg and Sanders have received in that state and what we can expect in New Hampshire during this whole process is Fox News political reporter, friend of our show as well, Paul Steinhauser, joins us now via Skype. Great to see you, sir.
Great to join you guys. Beautiful up here. We got the leaves, the autumn foliage, and we're getting a lot of presidential candidates as well. This tradition, this time-honored tradition of filing, going to the State House and filing and getting your name on the ballot is underway.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about you were able to wrangle both Buttigieg and Sanders, as you always are, and got some great stuff for them. Let's start with Senator Sanders. You had a question for him about super PACs, and he had a pretty tough response regarding Joe Biden's willingness to accept that super PAC money. Let's take a listen.
If my memory is correct, Joe Biden once said, and I'm paraphrasing, is that you got to be careful about people who have super PACs and who they will end up being responsible for. And in this campaign, Joe I understand that has not done particularly well in getting a lot of donations from working class people. We have over 1 million Americans who have donated to our campaign, and the average donation is $16. These are working class people supporting a working class campaign. Joe has not had that result, and he is now forced to go to billionaires and multimillionaires.
Senator Sanders going a little harder there than he normally does.
Yeah, Senator Sanders really taking aim again at Joe Biden over this super PAC. He's been doing it all week, but this was really cutting, this soundbite, I think, because he talked about Biden having trouble with middle class, working class voters. What is Joe Biden known as? Working class Joe with those roots from Scranton, Pennsylvania. So I think that was a clear shot, and Sanders will keep it up. And it was also kind of a way of saying, listen, I'm getting all the small dollar donors. Joe Biden isn't. These divisions between these two candidates are getting sharper. Again, we're just 3 months away from the first votes.
Yeah, and Paul, I know you also you also asked Bernie about Medicare. He talked a little bit about, he gave a challenge to Joe Biden, again, in a pretty significant remark. Let's take a listen to what he said.
So what I want Joe to explain is under his plan, which maintains the profiteering of the drug companies who charge us the highest prices in the world for medicine, which maintains the role of private insurance companies at a time when the healthcare industry made $100 billion in profit last year, when 87 million people are uninsured or underinsured, and 500,000 people went bankrupt last year as a result of medical bills. I want Joe to explain to the American people, how much will the premiums go up? How much will co-payments go up? How many more people will go bankrupt?
We haven't seen rhetoric like this from Bernie very much on the campaign trail. What did you make of that, Paul?
Well, this kind of verbal fistfight between the Biden camp and the Sanders camp really just starting this week. Until now, Biden has been almost complimentary of Bernie Sanders, saying he'd been out front for quite some time on how he would pay for his Medicare for All plan, as opposed to Elizabeth Warren. That's all changed in the last couple of days, and Sanders vehemently fighting and pushing back there, and very critical of Joe Biden for wanting to keep Obamacare and adding that public option. These divisions will only get sharper. And of course, Medicare for all, healthcare in general, the top issue really with Democratic primary voters. So this fight is going to only get worse. Now, of course, we see Elizabeth Warren putting out the details of her plan on how she will pay her Medicare for all system.
Yeah, I'm sure that's good. We're talking about that later in the show. Everybody's going to be on top of analyzing those numbers. You also, though, got in some questions to Mayor Pete Buttigieg. He's one of the people who's been attacking Elizabeth Warren on Medicare for all. But you asked him this interesting question about New Hampshire and where exactly he thinks he should finish in New Hampshire. He was a little reluctant to say exactly what he thought would be realistic. Let's take a listen.
You'll be seeing a lot of us here in New Hampshire, both in terms of our commitments with investments, our large and growing ground game, and the use of my time. Because I think New Hampshire is the state that will really catapult me towards success in the nomination.
And does that mean you need to finish first, second, third here? Is there a number?
I'm not going to set up a goalpost just yet. Obviously, there's some competitors with a neighborhood advantage, but we do think that we can do well here. And when we do, that'll be a key part of our path to the nomination.
Bit of a squirrely answer there. Also, he's wearing a jacket. I haven't seen that in a while. But Paul, what'd you make of that?
Oh, listen, no candidate wants to take that bait. I try to bait him,
Yeah.
but nobody wants to take that bait and say, I have to finish first or second, because then if they don't, so,
Right.
no, smart not to go there. But let's be honest, this is an important state for him. He's been concentrating more of his time in Iowa. I think now we'll see a good amount of him here as well. He's raised a ton of money to put together a strong staff here, probably the best in the state other than what Warren and Sanders have. This is going to be a crucial state for Pete Buttigieg, but let's be honest, first things first, he has to have a good finish in Iowa. He's going to perform well here.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And he talked about what he thinks it will take to win in November. I think you're very much right about he needs to do well in Iowa and New Hampshire, because right now he's doing very poorly in South Carolina. But let's listen to what he said about how a Democrat can win and beat Trump. Is a little bit of a shot at Biden in here. Let's take a listen.
We've really got to build up a new normal. I'll also say, when it comes to electability, every single time my party has won the presidency in the last 50 years, it's been with a candidate who was new on the national scene, hadn't spent a lot of time in Washington, and represented a new generation of leadership. By contrast, every single time in the last 50 years, we have put forward the most Washington-oriented candidate. We have come up short in November.
Interesting. What'd you make of that?
That's been one of his talking points for a while,
Yeah.
and it's a good one. He's not the Washington candidate. He's the youngest also in the field at 37. And look at the other top rivals in the race. 77-year-old Bernie Sanders, 76-year-old Joe Biden, and 70-year-old Elizabeth Warren. So he's definitely a clear contrast to them. All of them have D.C. experience. He doesn't. And listen, you saw the latest polls out in Iowa this morning. He's doing well there. He's in fourth place at 10% here. So he's just below that top tier, well positioned, and he's got a lot of money, as we have 3 months to go again until Iowa and New Hampshire get to vote.
And Paul, I mean, the state of the race there really is up in the air. I mean, as I understand it, I mean, one of the latest polls had Bernie Sanders in the lead, Elizabeth Warren as well, and Joe Biden. They're all battling it out for the top three. Very different dynamic than what we see in Iowa. Why do you think it is so different than Iowa?
Well, listen, there's been, first of all, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, of course, are from the neighboring states. They have somewhat of an advantage. Joe Biden, extremely well known here, and now Buttigieg catching on a little bit more. So no clear front runner here. New Hampshire voters, very late deciders. That same poll, which was from University of New Hampshire for CNN, indicated that only 23% have definitely made up their minds. New Hampshire takes its time. It's going to definitely take a couple more months until they figure out what they want to do. They want to see the results in Iowa. And on February 11th, that's when they'll make up their minds. And so
there we go.
About 100 days
to go.
Thank you, Paul. Great to see you.
for the weekend.
Next on Rising, a Google processor is completing a task in just minutes when it would normally take about thousands of years to do so. It's called quantum supremacy.
I'm so fascinated by this stuff, and our friend Dr. Joe is going to join us to drop some knowledge about that, how it works, what it means, all of the good stuff when Rising continues. You don't want to miss it.